Well, straight from the city of Cleveland, we've got retired Greg Thomas. He was the director of transportation. I always enjoy talking with him. It's going to be a great conversation.
No, I haven't. I'm not really a candidate for that.
My mother had that.
Oh, okay.
It works.
Yeah.
Wonder why you weren't a candidate for that?
I don't know. It's something about the bone structure in there that just, I don't know, deteriorated the little nerves and stuff. And I tried out one of these things that they have a thing that they drill it in the back of your head.
Yeah.
And but they have another thing that they can just test that to see if that works, and you just put it on like a set of headphones or something, and it makes the vibrations there. Well, it really wasn't making enough difference to warrant doing that, so I thought, well, I'll just go with the hearing aids and, just give me the microphone thing over here. So that's what I got.
Whenever you read a story in the newspaper or see something on television about somebody getting arrested, you naturally assume they're guilty. Unless the story is about you or someone you love, then you'll think differently. And you'll want a lawyer who will defend you. My name's Scott Canavis. If you or someone you love has been charged with a crime, call me. I'll return your phone calls, I'll work on your case, and I will defend you.
Do you find that you can learn to read lips?
I think I probably do. I didn't exactly try that, but if somebody is if I'm sitting facing you and talking to you, that's perfect. But if you turn around and go the other way, then it gets hard to know what you're talking about. I mean, I can kind of hear noise, but that's about it.
I believe I'm losing my hearing in this ear.
Yeah, well, it's worth getting checked.
What would they do?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on.
I mean, what would they do to slow it down?
Well, it's more of a matter of catching up and restoring function and that kind of thing. I ultimately went to Allberg Audiology down here, and she was great.
I know her. She's real nice.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So no problems other than that, right?
No, can't hear and can't see too good, and old and cranky, but other than that, I guess I'm okay.
Do you like being retired?
I do. I kind of more set my own schedule now, and that's sort of good. And I've had plenty to keep me occupied with just different family stuff over the last few years and that kind of thing.
How long have you been retired?
A couple of years.
Oh, that long?
Yeah. So, yeah, time flies.
Cleveland's taken it's just altogether different, isn't it?
It sure is. I mean, the amount of growth that's happened since I've been here is just phenomenal.
Wow, isn't it? I can't get my arms around it.
I know, and I think it's a really good place to be. Back in we moved here in 2000. George Wood hired me as the planning director. George Wood was the city manager then, and so anyway, we already had some family here. My brother-in-law was up at Cleveland State and working up there, and it was a good place for us to land. But I think I was talking about growth, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Anyway, just the amount that's happened since then and is just really phenomenal. But when we moved here from Florida, and we would talk to people back in Florida, and they'd say, Cleveland, oh yeah, I know where that is. We stay there, because there were a lot of people we knew from church and so forth who were like from Canada or other places in the United States, but further up I-75. And they said, yeah, that's kind of the halfway point. So we know exactly where that is.
The motels call them halfbacks. They stop here halfway back.
Yeah, yeah. And that's true. That's a term. There was a demographer who wrote a bunch of books. His name was Richard Florida, of all things. It was kind of ironic for this kind of thing. But that's where I first encountered that term, halfback. You know, people that would move to Florida and decide, oh man, I just, you know, it's nice, but I can't take it here. I got to have some seasons, but I don't want to go all the way back to Michigan. So they were the people that got referred to as halfbacks. And I encountered all kinds of people down there that their plan for retirement was getting a house in the mountains near here. They wanted to, you know, get away and have some seasons, and but not be freezing cold either.
You know, transportation is, we think about it as just driving down the interstate or driving down the roads, but years ago it was horses, I guess, were the first transportation. What would have been the first, or would it have been camels?
Well, here probably horseback and walking, and obviously for a lot of long distance travel there was connection to a waterway system, which has always been important for here, because we're you know, we're part of the Tennessee River Valley, and we're situated just below where the Hiwassee dumps into the Tennessee. And so there was that. And then from the standpoint of Cleveland and Bradley County, this pretty much was the railroad in the South prior to the Civil War. I mean, the work, if you look at things done in the Tennessee legislature and all to support the railroad, that was in the late 1840s. That line that we have out there now has been there for a long, long time.
Prior to that, why would people come around this area?
Well, I guess for one thing, as down to the Hiwassee, that area had European settlement, but below the Hiwassee, it was part of the Cherokee Nation, and there was trading that went on for this and that. I don't know exactly what. And then time moves on from that, and there's different extractive industries that get developed, copper, some lead, and that kind of thing. Once upon a time, there was some talk of creating a canal system over, I guess, in like the edge of Polk County and so forth. I guess it would have tied into the Conasauga, and then from there on further south, because that area of water, the Conasauga Basin, about the lower third of Bradley County, is the only water in Tennessee that doesn't drain to the Mississippi. It finds its way down to about Apalachicola. So it's a little different.
Boy, that's odd, isn't it?
It is odd.
What is it, Mouse Creek? Isn't Mouse Creek the one that runs opposite, or what's?
Well, it does run north, and
which is odd, right?
and Candy's Creek does too. But I guess it's just where we are in the kind of the fold of the mountains. We're in the foothills, and if you look at a map of the Appalachian Mountains, the chain comes in kind of an angular way into northern Georgia and Alabama. Well, we're situated in the foothills with a lot of hills and valleys, and a previous transportation director, Tom Grant, used to talk about
I remember
that.
Tom, yeah.
As Bradley County being a series of hills and valleys, and he's right. When you think about the big challenges here, you can move north and south fairly easily, but moving east and west is difficult. I mean, we had Water Level Highway and Inman Street and Harrison Pike forming one sort of continuous stretch across.
But there was a break in the mountains through that,
Yeah,
right?
there was a break there, and if you look at downtown Cleveland, there's a plateau there, and then you go around another ridge where the cemetery is, and you're out and down into the valley of Mouse Creek, which is ultimately where they put Keith Street in about 1960. But building Paul Hutt Parkway was a major deal going east and west through a great big hill.
I remember when they were putting that in. I remember, you weren't here then, right?
No, I wasn't.
So I remember that it was supposed to be just for east and west travel with no entrances or exits. It was supposed to be fast travel, which obviously changed. But if they had another one, they say most counties, tell me if I'm wrong, or city counties progress moves towards the northwest. And I guess that would be because they're following the ridges, because that's the easy route, which is probably where they had just trails at the time.
Well, in some ways, but then when you look at one of the things about a city, from the late 1800s on, if you've got any kind of, for public health reasons, if you've got any kind of urban concentration, you want to develop some sort of sewer system. And, my understanding is that we used to have a lagoon system somewhere down around off of Mouse Creek in the vicinity of where the Church of God offices are now. Well, that, as you know, when it became more of a formal sewage treatment plant facility, moved north up to where Tinsley Park is. And then as we grew and expanded, the next operation is further up the creek at the soccer field complex, and now we're all the way up at the river. Well, we can't go north of the river, so whatever gets done for expansion will have to be up there, but we've kind of followed a progression as the water flows.
Textbook.
Yeah. Exactly.
I guess with transportation, you have to think about sewage and water and where the transportation's going to be needed, right?
Well, yeah, you do, especially in the sense of transportation. In some ways, is like you build it, they will come. That's true to some extent, but there's a connection between transportation and how we use the land, how developable it is, and what can be built in different areas. And if you're going to have urban-like densities and intensities, you need to have water and sewer in with that to support the development that's going to occur.
Has that always been the case? I mean, did they always say, hey, what are we going to do with this waste? I guess that was always.
Well,
I mean, that's the most.
If you look at, well, I guess probably the first example of a city to be really urban was Rome, and they had a sewer system. They had a way of getting rid of that. I mean,
did they have that first, or did they say, hey, we got to have a system to get rid of this? Which comes first?
I would say somewhat. People tend to realize they have problems and then do something about them. So there's a lot of reactionary kind of stuff to it. But, Rome was pretty smart about how to handle a lot of population. Did they have pipes or just open drains? I think it was subterranean underground pipe systems that they developed, or at least things that would have been built of brick and so forth, and concrete. They did develop that.
Concrete may have been the best invention anybody's ever come up with, because without that, you don't have a platform to put the electricity or.
Well, yeah, you don't, and then you need that. You need something that's, durable, and is going to handle traffic. And traffic that we have today is, you take a 18-wheeler, that's murder on a road system. I've forgotten the exact ratio, but the difference between that and a car running over a highway is incredible.
That's why they have city road standards, county road standards, and federal road standards.
Well, yeah, and if something is going to handle a lot of heavy commercial traffic, it needs to be constructed to do that.
You'd think that by now, after watching all of civilizations and urban growth, that they'd have an ABC plan. But it's hard. It would be hard to come up with that because you don't know what's going to be the biggest need. One town may have more sewer available and another town not. And another town has real accessible septic systems.
Yeah.
And another town might. So it would all be just different.
Well, you don't know how they're going to grow and what's going to prompt them to grow. I mean, cities throughout history have emerged for different reasons. Some because there was an intersection of trade routes. Mm-hmm. Some because there's a port here. Some because military necessity, or there's resources right there. Like if there's something that people are going to mine.
The gold rush, for instance.
Exactly.
All of a sudden.
And it's there. I grew up in Kingsport, Tennessee. I'm now living my life in Southeast Tennessee. Well, I grew up in Northeast Tennessee, closer to Virginia than we are to Georgia right now. And Kingsport itself its nickname is the Model City, and there was a community there on the Holston River, which with other tributaries like the Nolichocky and the French Broad makes the Tennessee River north of Knoxville. Well, so there was that sort of pioneer hunting, trading, farming, that kind of thing there. But then there was salt, and there was some iron furnaces and so forth around there. But around 1900 or so, or a little after, they developed this wood alcohol plant up there that was the foundation of Tennessee Eastman Company, which for a long, long time was the largest industrial employer in the state.
Golly.
I mean, they always used to say, if Eastman sneezes, everybody gets a cold, which it fed us all. I mean, that's pretty much where my family worked growing up. And so it had an industrial purpose, and the city grew. Eastman always took an active interest in what was going on there and a lot of the things that happened planning wise. So it was well laid out. And I think a lot of what we're seeing now is a demand for better transportation, better parks, so on and so forth, the kinds of things that people can enjoy, because we are going to attract people from where we're situated, and it's better to accommodate that and have a good livable environment for everybody that's here. But it takes a lot of work to get that done.
It takes a lot of future thinking, doesn't it?
It really does.
I mean, way out there thinking.
Yeah. You know, it's not, planning is we work off of, 25 or more year timelines. That's the minimum timeline for a long-range transportation plan is 25 years. So you've got to be thinking about where you're going to wind up traffic-wise, and you'll look at things and it'll just be, you'll think, oh my goodness, these numbers are phenomenal. I remember reading statistics about truck volumes, and what they were saying at the time was, and that was, maybe 10 years ago, expect fully 1/3 more trucks on the highway by 2040 than what you're experiencing now. So when you think about that, 1/3 more truck traffic, that says you need to get started and planning the facilities you need to accommodate that, because
Not on the interstate, just on our city roads even?
well, no, that's mostly that's like interstate and what they call the national highway system, which includes the interstate as well as federal highways and some state routes. Our major roads.
Like Highway 60
Yeah.
would be in that. Is it
Yeah.
a state road or a?
Highway 60 is a state road, yes.
I know you have to get a state entrance permit, same way with North
Yeah.
Lee Highway,
Yeah.
going through Charleston.
Yeah.
State entrance permit. But that's because it's federal, I guess.
Well, it's a state highway, and it's TDOT administered, which actually US 11 is, which is also North Lee Highway, that is a federal route. And there's a federal route on water level highway, US 64, 74. And that's interesting in and of itself. I mean, we didn't have federal highway system until the late 19-teens. It began to develop. There was a Highway Act. That's how states got departments of transportation, and there was revenue sharing from the federal government to the states. But one of those conditions was you got to have a transportation department to handle that. And that was about the time of the Good Roads movement. And that was a thing that was, they actually had demonstrations on the back of rail cars, and they would unload in a town. I don't remember that they did one here, but they did it down in like Ooltewah, and they would actually do some grading and macadamization of roadways down there. And it was a big deal for people to be able to move goods to the market. And it also came about at the same time as the rural free delivery mail system. So all of a sudden you've got farmers on mudded, rutty roads that can't get anywhere when the season's there, and they've got the prospect of having mail delivered to them, and they've got a better prospect for getting their goods to market.
Or somebody to the doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of a sudden people are like, hey, wait a minute, maybe we really do need to pay attention in a big public sense to transportation. So that kind of thing began to happen, and we had first a named highway system, which was Lee Highway was one of those, Dixie Highway. You think about, there's a place north of here called Dixie Lee Junction. Well, it was the intersection of the Dixie Highway and the Lee Highway. It came about in sometime in the 20s, 1930 or so. So Lee Highway was the first big route through here, and there are historical documents that you can pull out to look at that show pictures of Bradley County and the roadway going in and that kind of thing. And then along with that, about the time of in the late 20s, early 30s, just as we began to get into the Depression era, there was water level highway, and what we know now as US 64 was actually billed as the Asheville to Chattanooga Highway, and there was a lot of boosterism related to that. And from like the Chattanooga Chamber of Commerce and our Chamber of Commerce, in that route would allow people to avoid Atlanta and have a highway route when it got where you could actually drive someplace. And I think one of the last legs of that road to get paved was somewhere over in Polk County, but all of a sudden you had the ability to travel from Asheville down through Cleveland and on to Chattanooga on an improved highway.
That was prior to the interstate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that was
exactly
a big corridor.
And and other things like you don't think about when Inman Street in 1900, or prior to 1900, that railroad went in there before the Civil War. Well, it was basically a big embankment there at the end of Inman Street, because you had to have a rail bed elevated so far. And it got to be a problem. Traffic congestion with horse-drawn wagons, if you can believe that, was a thing that people were complaining about. And the county court, the predecessors to the county commission, and the city commission, predecessors to the city council, and the railroad worked out an agreement to build the underpass where it is now, because they were, and I'm sure it created a problem for a railroad, because you had this confluence of farm roads coming in there right at where the terminal was, and you had wagons milling around there and people and everything else. I'm sure they were basically just in the way of the railroad. So the railroad agreed to that, and this underpass gets built there.
Not deep enough, and everybody
deep enough.
And everybody blames it was deep enough.
Well, it was then.
Yeah.
But we didn't have
You know, if you stand back and look at those two hills before you get to that where you go under, you can see where the ground was level.
Yeah,
It was-
absolutely.
You know, it just slightly go up a hill and back down. So
And from the pictures that I've been able to find, I mean, it was, pretty much excavated. But you're at the end of Inman Street there, where Edward Street comes across, and then you're, digging down there, and you're digging out the hill on the other side, and making room really for an underpass there. So it's a big hole essentially, and it floods occasionally, and that's a problem. And controversy or not, but if long-range weather patterns change and there's going to be more flooding, we're going to see more of that in that underpass. So that was the impetus for trying to get the bridge built across the railroad along 3rd Street when the opportunity existed, which people have been talking about building a bridge across the railroad there since at least the 50s.
on Inman.
No, on 3rd
On
Street.
3rd Street.
Yeah,
I see.
there was an old transportation plan.
You mean there at Woody's Lock and Key?
Yeah,
Okay.
and through
Yeah.
the old Whirlpool site.
Yeah, Jim Woody said his dad talked about that for years.
Yeah.
So
there
that-
was actually an idea at one point about building this inner circle with a bridge on Central Avenue and a bridge down there at 3rd Street. Well, what happened is from the late 1800s on and into the 1900s, as the industry developed down there, the stove industry, Hardwick stove and so forth, there just simply wasn't room down there to try to put a road in without, our bridge in without disrupting the industry. It wasn't going to work. So there were other things that happened in terms of the creating a truck route and so forth over there, and a better way to get out to the about 1980 or so, the APD 40 bypass. But now there's a big swath of empty land there, and the perfect place to set a bridge coming across the railroad downtown. So it really offers the opportunity to reshape downtown. And I know it sounds like a radical idea to a lot of people, but when you look around at other communities, there's a lot of places where you've got bridges over a railroad.
And you can see how the terrain works from about there, about the boys' club to there behind Beatty's. You can tell it's level from ridge to ridge.
And it's a mainline railroad.
But boy, how would they?
It's not going away.
No, it's not going away. And you can't hardly dig it deep enough. There's no other. Then you get into the why. Why have it? I guess just to preserve downtown, I guess.
Well, that's important, and being able to access what's going on the like the east side of town has always had a disadvantage from a standpoint of transportation and so forth. And if you want to see the town develop economically, then being able to get across it is important. And as we've moved over the decades, or over the last century, into an era of highway transportation, we're talking about a bridge that would essentially connect the state and federal routes that serve Cleveland, because you've got US 11 running along Key Street. You've got Harrison Pike, which is also a state route. You've got SR 60 on that side, and ultimately the interstate on that side. And then you've got 64 that goes through town on Inman Street. But what's the deficiency in that? You can bring a truck and meander around and go across at grade on 3rd Street on the truck route, or you've got to deal with this underpass, which you can't get through. I mean, heck, there were campers getting caught under there all the time.
Yeah.
So tying east to west, tying into State Route 60, which is Dalton Pike, State Route 74,
Yeah.
on that side. Also US 74 and 64, APD 40 bypass. We've got that route that everybody wants to get to, which is into the Ocoee and so forth over there, and enjoy all that wonderful scenery, but you need to be able to get through Cleveland and get over there without just going around Cleveland and getting back to the interstate. We need to be able to participate in some of that, and I think that having that bridge there would be a real game changer.
Is that, well, that's the plan, right?
Yeah, that is the plan now.
Yeah.
We'll see, but yeah.
They have to get grants for that?
Well, they do. Kind of the last thing that I worked on before I left was a grant that funded the federal share of that bridge. So it's my understanding that that's in place. And so I think it was one of the largest that the city ever got. It was close to $30 million, if I remember right. But yeah, we'll see going forward, but it was funded.
Do you think in 1900, you say they started the Good Roads, I guess, program in 1910. That was was that the answer to automobiles? Or did some planner say, hey, we're getting ready to have a lot of Model Ts drive through here, and we've got to have roads?
Well, I think that was a lot of it. There was a guy by the name of M.O. Eldridge who was from Loudon, Tennessee, and he worked for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. His boss used to be the president of UT, and when the McKinley administration went in, he brought him with him to the Bureau of Public Roads inside the Agriculture Department. And M.O. Eldridge really drafted the first highway bill and did all this stuff. It was kind of his brainchild, and it got a start with one day him and his boss were on a train somewhere up about Johnson City with the congressman from there, and they were looking out and seeing these wagons, people trying to get their stuff to market, just mired up to the hubs in mud. And it was like the perfect opportunity to appeal to a member of Congress and say, we need to do something about this, and there's a solution for this with some modern road construction techniques and so forth. So the country owes a lot of debt to East Tennessee because of M.O. Eldridge's ability to have some forward thinking on that.
So you're saying that was some forward thinking by him that was not, it wasn't like he got a model from another state.
No, I mean he borrowed internationally and so forth, and they did their own experimentation and so forth on
I guess they didn't
soils and that kind of thing, and what would work in different soil conditions. And
I guess asphalt wasn't even a thing then, right?
no, I mean you were trying to do a macadamized road with compacted earth and gravel of different sizes. I mean it made a good road
With
but,
ruts on both sides because of the way.
Yeah. So, but
would he have? Would a forward thinker now be saying? Maybe with these self-driving cars, I know we had that wreck on the interstate the other day. Would self-driving cars eliminate a certain percent of traffic jams, and that certain percent would just make everything so much smoother that maybe we have enough adequate roads now, we're just not traffic jammed as much? I mean, you think about how many times I think there's a traffic jam on I-75 right now.
you probably wouldn't be wrong about that. But
and is that due to user error and self-driving cars in the future are going to eliminate some traffic, or is it Amazon's delivering so much now that the stores are literally on the interstates driving the stuff to my door?
Well,
which is it?
I mean, it's kind of all of the above, and you mentioned part of that, and it's not just consumer goods. It's everything in our industrial system, all of that on just-in-time manufacturing. I mean, that was a big deal when Volkswagen went in, like, we want this to show up at our dock, like, I don't remember what it was, like 40 minutes before it goes into the assembly line. Gone is the day of, we warehouse all these parts on site and have them available and feed them into our assembly line at our leisure. They're basically paying somebody to warehouse it in a truck. And so the whole distribution system has changed, and it's put more pressure on the roadways. And I think some of what you're talking about, I mean, there's human beings are human, and they're operating vehicles, and they can only do so much. I mean, every driver responds to, even in an ideal situation, what's right in front of them. So there are transportation models that take that into account, and it will take a while to clear traffic out of an area. Would automated systems help that? Well, maybe it would smooth that out somewhat, and then there's a whole other it's not just self-driving, there's different computer-assisted kinds of things. You think about one of our cars, and you may have one with it too, your cruise control has a radar system in it that identifies the bumper of the car in front of you, and it's going to back your speed down.
I can feel it.
Yeah, exactly. And we have one car with that and one car without it. And honestly, I really like it. And because the ride is a lot smoother. And my wife was like, well, what are you doing? And I was just over in the right lane.
Yeah.
I set my cruise control a little lower than the speed limit, and I was watching everybody go by. I mean, well, that's okay with me. I don't care. We'll get there. I'm just going to use my cruise control. Well, it worked. But if I were in the other car, I might be moving with the faster traffic, but every time it slowed down, my car would slow me down. So, and you multiply that thousands of times over on a roadway, and you're going to get these mushes of traffic, that thing that pops up as red on your GPS
Yeah, and you
system.
get up there and there's no traffic there.
Yeah,
Everybody's-
well, there was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was like a slinky, one of those slinkies.
exactly, exactly.
But do you think that, how many years ago was it? How many years has it been since I order everything on Amazon. And how long was it? 5 years, maybe 6 years, maybe 10? I didn't do that. I went to Walmart, went somewhere. Now they just bring it to me, and they don't even have that many. I mean, Ace Hardware, I don't even go in there no more. They don't even,
Yeah, and I don't know how much that's going to continue to happen, because I think, and this is just me, but I think it's a lot of other people too. Like, I miss the experience of going in the store for something. I mean, I know Ace just moved and they got a completely different store layout and a bigger, nicer facility and all that. But for years, I lived right near Ace Hardware.
I love the old Ace. I don't like the new Ace.
But I was always going down there, and every time I would go down there, I would run into people I know.
Oh, yeah.
And I would stop and talk. And,
Get a bag of popcorn.
Exactly. And, you're down there, well, I need a bag of nails, or I need this or that.
Two screws.
Yeah. And it was like...
well, that's a Saturday morning thing.
Yeah. And, you would always run into people down there. But I think there's that. You multiply that out over different places that people would go. Like, I remember, if I wanted a lawyer for anything, I'd go to Diamond Lil's.
Yeah. At lunch.
Yeah, because they were going to be there.
Yeah. You want a carpenter, you go to Cleveland Plywood in the mornings.
Yeah,
Coffee
exactly.
The front counter at Wholesale Supply, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Probably if you was wanting a dress made, you'd go over here to one of these fabric
Well,
Hobby
I don't
Lobby
know,
or Hobby
maybe
Lobby
so.
or something.
But, people are social creatures, and they communicate with one another at church. They have different patterns going to restaurants and stuff, and different things like the hardware store. So I can't see, I think a lot of richness would disappear from our lives if we did just that.
There'll always be
just ordered stuff all the
there'll
time.
always be a need for that. But I don't know if there'll be a need for the big Sears, which they're all gone,
Well, yeah. I
And
mean,
even Walmart, they've got a new online thing. I tried it here a while back, and they were good. They were maybe even better than Amazon. So a lot of stores are getting that now.
yeah, and I think like the big brick and mortar retailers, I mean, maybe they're going to be in big urban centers and stuff like that, and some of the smaller or medium-sized communities may not have as much of that kind of stuff going forward. I think we're already seeing that. Like you said, Sears is gone.
Yeah.
But when you look at Sears, how did Sears arise? We talked about
That's right.
the transportation system.
Yeah.
Sears came about when you could get anything out of their
catalog.
Their catalog, Montgomery Ward, that kind of thing. When the rail systems went through, there was heck, you could buy a house at Sears. We've got some Sears houses here in town,
yeah.
I think.
Several.
And so
Things change, though.
they do change.
What's going to be the future if you had to really think crazy out of the box? Because it's going to be different.
Yes, I think so. I think people are going to be the same. I think, honestly, in my lifetime, I think some of the major changes have probably been in communications, because I think that's a thing that we can't ignore. You know, we talk about utilities. Well, what do you got for internet service, and how much of that drives what people are able to do? I mean,
You can't even apply for a job anymore. You got to go online. and
well,
apply.
yeah, and this conversation that we're having right now
This is an example.
is going to depend on the internet to get it out there. And I think, you know, looking at the high-speed system that Cleveland Utilities is putting in for us now, I think that's I know there's a lot of political controversy around who does what when it comes to the internet, but we really, I think, to function at a high level of commercial activity and job growth, we really need to be able to have the ability to not just download stuff, but also upload stuff as well.
That's the problem,
I've
isn't it?
had people tell me that that's the essential problem, and the why of them locating where they did on the EPB system in Chattanooga versus up here was they didn't have the upload speed. So I'm hoping that this solves that problem and that we're able to ride that wave and be able to offer that level of service here, because I think it'll be important to the kinds of jobs that we have in the future.
Maybe the last 20 years from, or 30 years, you know, 70 to 90 or something was transportation, and then the last 20 years it's been communications and internet and that sort of thing, and maybe the next 20 years is going to be putting those things together for medical. I think that's going to be the thing, maybe these cancer vaccines, but I think it's eventually going to have to, and then maybe it might be housing. I believe people are over these big houses and big house payments and you know, maintenance and all of that stuff. I believe they're going to go to more pod type housing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot as we get older, in particular, like, do I want to maintain that? You know, hell no, not really. And I bet at the same time, you know, you think about, well, I want enough space to have people in, and my family and my grandkids and all of that kind of stuff. I may want a house on a small lot.
With somewhat of a yard.
Yeah, but not a huge yard. And I think that's a thing. And, you know, it's tough right now with I mean, I think about, you know, we got used to cheaper money for mortgages, and then we've got that, plus we've got just the cost of construction. And it's really hard for a lot of people to get in a house. I know one of the things that, well, I started before I retired, but I work with City Fields, which is a nonprofit community development corporation that serves lower income neighborhoods in Cleveland. And a lot of what it does is help provide housing. And it's just tough to be able to keep costs down, work with lenders, work with borrowers, get them situated, make sure they're in jobs and so forth with the necessary skills where they can make house payments. And it's hard, and then you've got an aging population on top of that, and what do you do? What do you do with that? I read a really interesting article the other day about, I think the term they used was co-housing, and it was about seniors who were like sharing a space. And they weren't relatives, but in order to be able to afford space and get the amenities and so forth that they wanted, I mean, maybe you don't need, you know, a great big kitchen for one person, but maybe you need a, you know, private living space and a shared kitchen or shared laundry or something like that. And about different approaches to doing things like that to make it
Students
affordable
do that
for,
in some of these colleges. They have the shared common areas they were in a fourplex with a common area. Mm-hmm. Sort of goes back to if a person sat down for 5 or 6 hours and thought all that stuff through, he could just about pinpoint what the next living arrangements are going. That'd be easier than figuring out traffic studies, because you know people's nature. And
I think we're going to see all kinds of stuff like that. And you talk about, you know, where are we going to see that? And there is traffic, but the other thing too is like pedestrian amenities. And what are we going to do with land use? Do you want to be in a situation where you can walk a couple of blocks to the store or a restaurant? A lot of people want that. Mm-hmm. And I think we're playing catch up with that to some extent here, but we're doing it. And we've got a downtown street grid system that is kind of amenable to that. Not every part of town is that gonna work for, but potentially it could for a lot of town. And then, you know, what do you want to do with like neighborhood commercial? I mean, I remember when I was in college, there was a little thriving grocery store. It was about 3 blocks away. And it was a traditional downtown corner grocery store. When my world was caving in because I couldn't figure out something for the next test, I could walk 3 blocks and get me some strawberry ice cream, and I'd be on to the next thing. And you know, a lot of people want to be able to do that.
They were all around here. I was over on driving down Wilson Avenue, you know, going in the City Fields area.
Yeah.
Saturday morning, and there's a where the road forks. You go Wilson, and then there's a
little corner store.
Corner store, and you can see the old curb.
Yeah.
The old, where you might stand to wait on the bus or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was an old, you know, before you had gas.
Yeah.
There was a lot of them. There were several next to Deer Park.
Yeah, exactly.
And they would sell, I guess, staples sort of thing, just stuff you know, like. But now they would, well, if you started sewing out of your house, they'd take you to you'd have to go before the variance board or something like that. You know what I'm saying? I got a lady that lives in one of my houses. She's got a sign out that says she sews, and so I took a pair of pants over there one time. She's got a little factory set up in her house. It works real good. I mean, don't bother a soul.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we've got, and you know, you talk about how things change. And there was an ordinance put in place for that back when I was there. We got a lot of home-based businesses because there's a lot of, I mean, there is work that people do that's just, you know, on their computer at home. I mean, my daughter does that. But there's also stuff where people make things, do things, little
So?
stuff like that. There was a lady that was going to do like small scale craft breads. I don't know if she's still in business or not, but you know, she was supplying
Yeah.
different restaurants and stuff like that. But you would never know that.
That it was
That it's
there.
there. And that's the whole idea behind a home-based business from a zoning standpoint. People don't want a smokestack next to them, but if somebody's in there doing, you know, sewing or
Yeah.
teaching a piano
Maybe
lessons or
has
something
an
like that, you're
accounting-
not going to know.
Or has an accounting business and has one car
Yeah,
one before lunch and one after lunch pulls in.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of owning your own home. I mean, that's supposed to be the liberty.
and there's a ton of that, and I think you know, my imagination is that some people have permits and others don't, but you can easily get one. They're free.
Yeah.
And the philosophy behind it was we want people to be able to do that. From a governmental standpoint, because it supports them being able to make a house payment and all that other stuff. You think about it, and what do they do with that money? Well, they're going to go out here and buy groceries. They're going to do other things. It makes sense.
It would be real hard to tell somebody they couldn't that they can't make a living in their house. It'd be real hard to argue that unless you had some kind of I watched this documentary one time it was a German documentary, and the title of it was Why We're Rich. And they would go around looking at these home-based businesses in Germany, and they'd have one employee, you know, which I know you can't have employees in the subdivision really, but that was the idea. It was whatever they could do within their house. It works real well.
Yeah.
But you know, maybe all of this planning we do is just reactive, and maybe there's really, you know, I heard somebody say one time, if you plan 5 years out, there's no way you can plan 5 years out, because 5 years, I mean, so much, I guess you have to try.
Yeah. And I think, you know, some of it is observing what's going on and trying to respond to that. I mean, when I was responsible for all that kind of things, I would tell employees, it's, you know, no, we gotta follow whatever the rules are, but try to find a way to say yes, because, I mean, that's important for people, and a lot of what we see in the way of like the home-based businesses, we did change that in my tenure to add stuff, and it wasn't just Cleveland; other communities were doing it too, because there was a lot more of it, and I don't remember, but my recollection is that, you know, you could have one employee that come in and park in your driveway, like I know, like accounting businesses and so forth.
They've got somebody,
that, and they've got to have somebody.
They got to have a bookkeeper also.
And you know, it just works.
It works real well.
If you look at data about, you know, where do people work and that kind of thing, you're not going to get that locally, but you may extract some of that kind of stuff from the census, and there's a ton of it.
And a lot of people are a little bit leery saying I work at home. You know, not as much now, but 10 years ago it was a little more of a.
Yeah.
I mean, you take somebody that cuts hair. Like I got my hair cut by Raymond for years, and I'd go out on his front porch every 3 weeks, and he'd cut my hair. You know, it was he even tried to get it changed to residential. I remember that he tried to get it changed to residential, and they wouldn't. But he cut hair for years.
Yeah.
When did you get that interested in? Is your interest mostly in transportation, or is it just government or cities, or is it just almost psychology?
Well, it's kind of all of the above. When I was in college, I was a business major as an undergrad up at UTK, and my major was transportation and logistics, trucks, trains, warehousing, how you move, inventory, and how you move finished goods and get those where they need to go. That was the career path I was on, and I was working as a co-op student. I would go to school for a quarter, and then I'd work for a quarter. I worked for General Electric over in North Carolina, and my favorite part of that was essentially an OS&D desk, overshort and damaged, and I worked in the warehouse, and we would we shipped goods worldwide from there, and my job was to sort out when there was some kind of foul up somewhere in the system and the wrong stuff got on the wrong trailer, or somebody didn't get something, and all that kind of thing. Like, I remember a salesman calls me one day, because they're the point of contact with the customer for a utility in Alaska, and he said, "No, you don't understand. I've got to have that capacitor now because it's getting dark here 24/7 in about 3 weeks." So that was on some oil platform somewhere. So anyway, I did that. It was a fascinating job, but I had the director of the Graduate School of Planning, a fellow by the name of Jim Spencer, who grew up down about Jackson, Tennessee. He was a planner who had, went to Ohio State, and he's still with us. I just met with him fairly recently up in Loudon. But anyway, he called me and said, "Have you considered planning?" Now, why he was calling me, I don't know, other than I was about to graduate. And I said, "No, I don't even know what that is." And he said, "Well, come down to my office and I'll tell you." And so he explained what all planners were involved in, and that kind of thing. And I always had this interest in public things, and it just checked all the boxes for me. I think that sounds fascinating. I think I want to do that. So sign me up. And long story short, I got through their program and went to work in Augusta, Georgia for about the first 7 years of my career, and then moved to Florida and was down there for 7 years, and then came up here. So
Quite a path, huh?
Yeah, it was. And it's been interesting work. All kinds of oddball things. One of in Florida, I worked in a little town called Punta Gorda, which got hit hard by Hurricane Charlie. But it was the last stop on the railroad going south before they extended the railroad into Fort Myers in 1912. So Punta Gorda had been there right on the Gulf since the 1880s, and they had an old city hall and so forth. Well, a guy that was retired from Public Works came in one day, and he said, "My wife said I got to take this back down there and get it out of her way." Well, he had been working, when they cleaned out the old city hall, he got one of the spittoons from the 1880s. So I became the curator of the city spittoon. And we had that was a town that we had a lot of interest in the history, because it was an old town. We had like a ceremony and stuff to install the city spittoon there. So that was interesting, and just I met all kinds of people.
Do you have any old relationships from even Augusta that you're still friends with them?
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. Some people I keep up with. And it's just interesting. You know, a lot of people I've known have passed on, and that's sad. But I mean, that was an interesting place to work. We worked in a desanctified synagogue that was on Reynolds Street, right across from the old Medical College of Georgia building in Augusta. And you know, that's an old
yeah.
town. Right down the street from where Woodrow Wilson spent part of his youth. His father was a pastor at Presbyterian Church there. And just all kinds of history there, and it was interesting. A lot of stuff about one job I had down there was over on the river. When I was there, they've been working on this plan for like 20 years. Well, what they wanted to do was breach their levee after the lake got built up above them. Hartwell, not Hartwell. Anyway, they didn't need the levee like they used to prevent the flooding down there. And so they wanted to open up the river and get access to that and revitalize some of the old things down there. They had like an old cotton exchange down there. And we took there was some wallboard down there, and we took it down, and there was, like, behind it, there was writing on a chalkboard from 1912 quoting all the
prices or something.
Yeah, they had a ticker tape that ran in there from the whole world over, like the you know, number one short staple cotton was going for this much a pound in Berlin, and that kind of thing. So that was interesting, and I got to meet this fella down there who was the last remaining cotton factor in Augusta, and they would do an article every fall in the paper where about the first bale of cotton that was harvested. And he was telling me about how when he was a kid, you could climb up on a bale of cotton at one end of town and walk on top of cotton bales till you got to the other end of town.
Wow.
And it was the largest inland market apart from Memphis for cotton back before the boll weevil and all that stuff. And he talked about the origins of the Masters tournament and how they used to beg him to put the players up in their houses and that kind of thing.
No,
it doesn't work that way anymore.
No,
But I've just met all kinds of really fascinating people over the years. I heard a voice downtown downstairs in the office one day, and I think, I know that voice. I've heard that voice because it was really high, and it turned out it was Butterfly McQueen, who had the role as Prissy in Gone with the Wind. She was from Augusta, and she lived part of the year there and part of the year in New York. And
which one was Prissy? Was that the?
She was like the maid that told Scarlett she didn't know anything about birthing babies.
Right. Yeah. Heavy. A little heavy.
A very, very distinctive voice. And
so she was there.
Yeah, and my office there was a spiral staircase there from the first floor that came up to the second floor where my office was, and I could hear stuff coming up that staircase, and she was there for a permit to put a mobile home in. And I was like, I know that voice. And so I went downstairs, and sure enough, it was. And one of the guys down there that was in charge of issuing those permits, and we said, Rob, don't you realize who that was? And he said, oh, you're kidding. So he goes chasing out the door after. She already had the autographs just with her, said, okay, here it is. So, but yeah. So interesting stuff.
That's interesting. Did you, what do you do now? If you're retired, I mean, what do you spend your time with, or does this family consume it?
Well, there's been a lot of family stuff. Unfortunately, you know, all the generation before me has now passed on, and there was a lot of stuff that I was left to manage. I was the oldest nephew on one side of the family and the youngest nephew on the other side, but somehow I wound up kind of being involved in a lot of that. And we took care of my mom for a good while before she passed away. And there was just a lot of stuff to do. And of course, we have 3 children who are all adults now, so there was.
So you got grandkids too?
No, not yet. We got a grandcat and a granddog. But so there was that, and the stuff like with city fields, and I'm on the board of zoning appeals for the city. So there's that comes up about once a month, and just different stuff like that. And then I have time to read a lot, which I do. And, you know, one of the things I got into in the latter part of my career was a lot of grant writing. And some of grant writing is being able to tell a good story. And I don't mean one that's untruthful, but what I mean is one that will make sense and resonate with people. So the stuff about the bridge and so forth, there were a lot of federal requirements related to that. Mm-hmm. How do you address the needs of our population and interpret that through the lens of a federal grant reviewer? And a lot of that comes from, you know, spending a lot of time reading stuff and getting to know different bits and pieces about how our population changed over time, and be able to relate that history and that kind of thing in compelling ways. So usually the first thing I do getting up after I make the coffee, stick my nose in a book. And that's been a long habit, and it's paid off in kind of indirect ways.
So in creative writing and how to capture the attention of the reader?
Yeah.
Some people can't do that. Some books can't do that.
Yeah, I've read some dull books.
I have too, and I don't know how they get published. I think, dang, who's reading this? You know, interesting writing is either a gift or a learned art. I'm not sure. What would you read, fiction or documentaries?
I read mostly nonfiction. I like historical stuff. I like. I'll get started on certain themes, mostly what I'm interested in history is from post-American Civil War up through the end of World War I, which to me, on a world stage, is just incredibly fascinating.
You mean like 1850 to 1950?
Like, say, 1865 through about 1920.
A lot of changes, right?
Yeah, there were a lot of changes. I mean, when you think about what took place in World War I.
What year was World War I?
It began in 1914 and it ended in 1918. And for some perspective, the old City Hall building down there was built in 1916. So it was right in the middle of this great global conflict, but before the United States became involved in 1917. I've always been interested in how populations migrate and what causes them to migrate, and economic stress on different groups of people and so forth. So the idea that people move around the globe is not a new thing. It's always been with us, and people have always been displaced for one reason or another. But that was not the first global conflict. I guess you could. There were Napoleonic wars before that, but in terms of mechanized warfare on a huge industrial scale, it confronted people whose lives were horse and buggy, more or less. And here all of a sudden they're in this conflict with airplanes, with high explosives, with chemical munitions, and all of this stuff.
Nitroglycerin, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just changing the shape of the world. And like one of the books I have, it's really interesting, is about a German spy network here in the United States whose job was to prevent the shipment of horses as draft animals to Europe during World War I to cripple the British and French war effort against the Germans. And they were doing all kinds of stuff to, like, make the horses go lame or die or that kind of thing. And it was really
So it
fascinating.
was involving 4 countries right there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And so there was, you know, those kinds of things, and all of the communications, and like the telegraph was something that was new, and radio communication and telephone were in their infancy. I mean, the telegraph really wasn't new. I mean, it had been around even in the Civil War days, but like the transatlantic kind of things. I mean, you know,
So
one
in
of the first things they
1850,
were
did
doing
they have
was
telegraphs?
yeah, they were just coming into play, and some of those lines came through our region.
Not the radio yet, right?
No, that wasn't going to be in place until the 20s, really.
Now let's say that same era, that's a 60-year period. So back up 1800.
Yeah.
You're walking through here, you're a Cherokee Indian. This is not even the United States. You got to have a visa to go across into Calhoun, right?
Yeah, in the 1830s, that's kind of what it would have been like. I mean, there were Cherokee towns and villages, and there was a communication network, so to speak. In one of the books that I can't say I've read the whole thing, I haven't finished it, but it's called Paul Houghton's Mantle, meaning like a robe, and I've forgotten exactly how the book got the title.
I mean,
but
like his fur, I guess.
yeah, a lot of what it talks about is the communications that went on between different Native American communities, and how they got along. And I got it honestly because I was really interested in the maps in it about where were these trails and so forth. And, you know, well, I mean, Spring Place Road, getting to Spring Place was not a white Bradley County settler thing. That was a Cherokee thing to get to Spring Place. You know?
Well, I think when you go out Baker's Bridge Road and stuff, those had to be walking trails.
Yeah.
Because they're going like, you know, there's no rhyme or reason other than you lived here and you were going there.
Yeah. So, and, you know, there's a lot of that. And
But if you were here in 1860, you'd say, boy, look at the changes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
so-
from 1830...
I say 1800 to 18.
And I say, the reason I peg it in at 1830, because it was about in the mid-1830s when the whole Trail of Tears episode took place, and the United States actually took control
So like
of
18
what's Bradley County came about in 1836, and it could not have come about before then. It wasn't United States
It was
territory.
a Cherokee
Yeah,
nation.
exactly. But so that happens, and then you've got the more beginnings of more white settlement here, and then you've got the idea that, hey, we need to have a railroad. Well, where's the best place to put a railroad? I mean, it's in a valley, and you look at the rail system, and it basically, that early railroad, I mean, other than the railroad in like coming out of Charleston, South Carolina is running up the Tennessee River Valley and in the Valley of Virginia and on up toward Washington. That was the central core, and that's what made this area so important.
According to the book, Rott, Captain Rott, is the one that got the station here.
Yeah.
So the period you're talking about is after Rott. That's when everything started to change to this mechanized things were of a concern to the world. Prior to that, it was just Europe.
Yeah, I mean, and there was a lot more of that when there was more communication in terms of newspapers.
Dime novels. The printing press probably had a lot of,
Yeah.
they could print stuff easier.
Yeah, and it's a marvel that they kept newspapers going to the extent they did through the Civil War, but they did. And then afterwards, I mean, it was primary means of communication. You read a lot of things going forward into political campaigns. That's something that is interesting for me to collect. Like, and the major parties went together and published like platforms and so forth from the campaign of 1896 and 1900 and 1912 and so forth. And it's interesting to go and read those books. I picked them up at various times in, like used bookstores. Like, what were they campaigning on back then? What were the issues of the day?
And there were some. They had to, if there wasn't one, they had to come up with a reason to change whoever was in the office.
Yeah, and so...
That's nothing new, is it?
No, it's not. And, but just to, how was it that people were living, and to read like old census documents and stuff like that, you don't think about it. You think about the census, oh, well, they're going to count people. Well, they counted a lot of other stuff besides that. And unfortunately, most of the 1890 census was destroyed in a fire. Bits and pieces survived, but the 1900 census, the 12th census, is interesting. I mean, it talks about animals, like how many kinds of, I think they refer to them as indoor and outdoor cattle, is how they classified them, and how many were in a given community.
Why was that important to them? to count? Wonder.
I think it was a measure of economic success. I mean, they weren't just
For your area, for their for demographics, I guess. Maybe
well,
they were doing
yeah. I mean, it wasn't just a matter of how am I gonna. It wasn't necessarily something you're going to eat, but if it's a draft animal, how do you get around? You know, how are you going to do your plowing? How are you going to do all this other stuff that's really important? And you look at the amount of agriculture. I mean, that was a time period when we raised a lot of berries here, and we raised a lot of peaches. And we were able to, I guess, you know, bring that to market, get it on the railroad, ship it out to far-flung markets, and it was important to be able to sell those things. And you know, you're looking back at stuff like in the early. In the 20s, there was the state legislature decided that they were going to build colleges in Middle Tennessee, East Tennessee, and West Tennessee, the Grand Divisions. Then it became a question of, well, where are those going to go? There was a huge amount of competition for that, and Cleveland was in the thick of it. And I remember looking at an old Bradley County map, which somewhere down Dalton Pike, there's this thing that says college site. It had been integrated on this map. Well, there was no, to my knowledge, there was never a college down there. And I'm kind of thinking that's something they were doing to the map. That was what they were showing state officials at the time, because you had to show a lot of state support. Well, obviously, Johnson City won out, and what's now ETSU was that East Tennessee Teachers College. But Bradley County and Cleveland were in the thick of the competition for that. And lots of that kind of stuff just goes by the board and people forget about it over time. They weren't forgetting about it then. It was really important, and they were talking about doing different kinds of exhibitions and stuff here locally. Like, I think it was George R. Stewart wanted to have like this Chautauqua conference here, and in emulating some of the things that were happening in upstate New York, and they wanted to have there was a fair here, and part of the fair, the big exhibition, I think part of the reason was to pay the cost of installing the monument that's down there where
I guess.
Just all kinds of interesting things, and that would have been, well, that thing went in 1913, so it would have been about then, but just reading old newspapers and
Does
saying,
it tell you
what
that?
were people talking about back then?
Does it
It's
tell you that
fascinating.
nothing's really changed? Just the subjects have that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's parts of the subjects and the characters have definitely changed, but the kind of stuff that drives people's interest, I mean, there's like, how are we going to make life better for us and the people we know? And it's a continual interest of any community everywhere.
Have you ever seen what happens when things, you say, okay, we're studying long-range planning. What happens? Do things ever regress? I mean, what's the examples of that? Because that could be devastating, or does that not happen? I mean, is there a town that we say, boy, this used to be I think Polk County used to be more populated than Bradley County at one time. Charleston was more populated than Bradley County.
I think that does happen sometimes. I mean, a good example in the Appalachian communities is like coal camp areas. When the resources played out, they were gone. Now, they had its own sort of unique circumstances, and you may have had a mining company setting up churches and stores and people buying with company script and all that kind of thing. But if the resource plays out and people are gone, there's some of that on a small scale. A large scale, and I've forgotten which invasion it was, but somewhere around 500 or 600 A.D., the onset of the Dark Ages. I mean, that's pretty much what happened with Rome, with the invasion of I'm forgetting which one it was. I think the Visigoths at that time, but there was a lot of that, and this civilization just disappeared. And where was it kept alive? I mean, to some extent in monasteries and that kind of thing. And that was, we're going through what's the Dark Ages, and then we get to later on to the Renaissance. And I'm by no means an expert in that whole kind of thing, but I think it's really interesting. And there's, a lot of small scale kind of stuff that tells you a lot about how people settle. Like, why do you have these long rectangular strips of land in like different places in England coming out from villages, and it had to, or in Europe, it had to do with how they plowed and how one peasant family would have this strip of land, and gradually those were divided over time, and a lot of things like that. And the plow itself had a lot to do with how we became urban. I mean, populations have to feed themselves. It's not not so much urban farming, but when you get where you can have an economic surplus of grain, then you have a situation where you can have other people who are devoted to doing things like smithing, and then you have merchants, and then you have all this other stuff, and the towns arise. But the fundamental basis of urban civilization is agriculture, and it's unwise to forget that. And we think about planning as an urban activity, though it does take place in rural communities as well. And it's wise of us to consider that our cities can't exist without agriculture, because we can't feed ourselves.
And we can't grow.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's always a heavy interest in agriculture. And as we think about things like climate change and so forth, which is in some people's minds a dirty word, but it happens that what if it affects what we grow and how we grow? I mean, it may mean that some things can be grown that weren't grown before.
We don't know it yet.
And it may be that some things that we used to grow, we can't really grow as much anymore. Like, I had did some landscaping work around the yard, and we bought some plants, and the guy at the nursery was talking about what to integrate, and they said, yeah, we used to sell rhododendron, but it got to where it just wasn't surviving here anymore. And is where we have it is mostly in the shade, so it makes it. But I guess in a lot of places, Bradley County may not be a good environment for it anymore. And so there's just going to be stuff like that. And, you know, we don't eat rhododendron, but.
Well, even
you know,
tomatoes, I went down to the farmer's market Saturday, and I could tell one of the people there had brought them in boxes and just took them out like they were homegrown tomatoes.
Yeah.
But I can tell.
Yeah.
And then the other guy, I could tell that they were grown in Delano. You know.
Yeah.
And Delano's got that good acidy soil in it. Really
Yeah.
good homegrown tomatoes. But the thing was like $7, and I remember it being $2.50, but you gave them 3 or something like that. It wasn't
Yeah.
$7. So there could be a time when you know, unless they get into this what do they call that farming where they hang stuff up.
Oh, the vertical farming?
Yeah, vertical farming
Yeah.
or something, which it just can't. I don't know. You have to test that stuff and see if it had the same stuff in it that we get out of soil.
Yeah.
Which is mostly. So, yeah, I just wonder if you almost need to have a group that does long range planning and a group that does 5-year planning, because it's different, and a group that does what if planning,
Yeah.
because things could happen.
Yeah. Your 5-year stuff is not, I mean, the fundamentals aren't going to change that much in a 5-year period.
No, but let's say if Whirlpool had to decide to go to wherever that other one town lost them or something.
Yeah.
If it would have been a big deal then.
It would have been a huge big deal. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, that's why they say don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah. Yeah. Have multiple baskets. So, yeah.
So
That's for sure.
what's your you plan on staying in Cleveland till you retire? I mean, till you
Yeah.
go into a home.
Yeah. I'm here for the duration.
You still live
I think.
over off Peerless?
I do. I
Yeah.
do. Yeah. So, yeah.
What's a convenient location, isn't it?
Well, it really is. I mean, that's part of kind of how we picked it, and there wasn't hardly anything for sale in there then. But, you know, my wife was going to work up at the college, so at Cleveland State, so it was convenient for her, and it was convenient to Stewart Elementary School, and that was great for the kids, and yeah, and it was convenient for me to get to work downtown.
How many times have you eaten at Wendy's?
Too many. Too many. So, yeah, and it's, yeah.
I mean, if you're home, I'll just stop here at Wendy's, right?
Absolutely. It's like a kind of a default thing, or where the city cafe
What they
is.
got? Yeah, what they got best at Wendy's nowadays? Are their fries still too thick?
I don't know. I mean, I don't eat fries much anymore, but I'm just simple. Just like, give me a cheeseburger with mustard on it, and I'm happy. So, yeah.
2 cheeseburgers or just one?
I just get one. I don't want too much bread.
Are you glad to be out of the city inner workings where you can kind of just watch it from the outskirts but not really be an integral part of it? That's got to be a little bit of a relief.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I've gone back and done a little grant writing since then, and I had since I retired, and but that kind of in the latter part of my career, I worked for the MPO. That was a lot of my responsibility, was an MPO coordinator. I mean, I was working for the city, but the MPO, in short, is responsible for doing transportation planning for state and federal dollars on that roadway network in the city, like, 25th Street and Key Street and major facilities like that. So we did the long-range transportation plan, and we would do the transportation programming, which that's a good example of the 5-year thing. I mean, we had a long-range transportation plan that was a 25-year document, but when stuff actually got funded, it went into a transportation improvement program, which was like a 3-year document. So, and there was always stuff that would get delayed, and it would roll forward. But if you're going to actually spend those dollars on it, well, it goes in the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program. So that was kind of where I spent the latter years. Did some stuff with the CDBG program and that kind of thing. It was interesting for me, but I was part of getting started with CDBG programs in 2 different communities. One in Punta Gorda, it became a new entitlement community, and then one here in Cleveland. So I did it ground up twice. So that was kind of interesting. So anyway.
You've had an interesting career.
I have. So, and I'm grateful for that. And I've met a lot of people. I was just thinking about something on like the way up here, which is, when's the first time I remember meeting Dee? And it was honestly on 9/11.
Is that right?
You and Randy Brown and I had a meeting that morning, and the World Trade Center is collapsing, but when you're in the midst of just living your life, I mean,
I went down to Randy Brown's to pick him up. That's where I got the announcement. I saw it on John's TV. I must have picked him up and come to meet you.
Yeah, I think you did, and then we went and got lunch somewhere and talked about, but none of us could. I mean, you were there for a reason, but all of us were just like, "What's happening? Our world just stopped here," and
we didn't know what to think. We didn't know what to think.
We did not.
Didn't know if it was even a hoax. You just didn't know.
And it was just wow. And so yeah, that was. I know I had met you before that, but that signal event like sticks in my mind.
I miss Randy Brown. I don't see him anymore like I used to.
Yeah, well, Randy's retired.
Yeah.
And one of the things us old retired guys do is go to the eye doctor and stuff, and I ran into him there.
Is he in good spirits?
Yeah, he was. He's done. Randy was a great guy, and he has sold his business, and he was able to work with, Tanya Young that works for the city. Her son Jake was interested in surveying, and so Randy took him under his wing, and because you got to work for a surveyor for a certain time. He's working for a different surveying company now, but Randy's equipment and all his client base and everything
Young's son. I just remember when.
Yep.
I remember when she was getting married.
Yeah, and yeah, yeah, her and Josh Holder were, gosh, they were just babies
Oh,
when I got
yeah.
there.
Yeah, and they're both still there. I guess
Yeah,
Tanya's still
they
there.
are.
Yeah,
They are.
they do everything through email now.
Yeah, and shoot, I was looking around one day, man, I'm the old man here now.
We're not old. We got another 30 years left.
There we go.
Well, I'm gonna go home and watch the Tour de France.
Okay,
Everything else good,
I reckon.
Greg?
Well, this was fun.
Hey, I really appreciate you coming.